Very good afternoon to each one of you. On behalf of Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome you all for this firstly the webinar series on BRSR, Core Understanding the 9 Key Performance Indicators. The session is organized under the aegis of the Chamber's ESG Expert Committee, chaired by Mr. Mohan, who is the former Senior General Manager, EHS at Bosch Limited, and co-chaired by Mr. Rajesh, who is the Country Environment and Sustainability Manager at ABB India Limited. I'm Roopa, Assistant Secretary General at BCIC, and I'm accompanied by our Secretary General, Colonel Harish, and supported by my colleague, Purushottam. The Chamber acknowledges the support of Dr. Ravichandran, who is the Managing Partner at KSR and Co. Company Secretaries, and who is also the author of CSR and ESG. Thank you very much, sir, for your support by way of accepting our invitation to address this series of webinars. Next slide, please. Chamber acknowledges the support of its annual sponsors for their immense support in all the activities of the Chamber. Thanking you all once again for your kind participation at this knowledge sharing webinar. And I now request Mr. Mohan, the chairman of the committee, to introduce the speaker and take it over from here, sir. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roopa. First of all, Dr. Ravichandran, Colonel Harish, Roopa, Purushottam, and all the participants for this important I would say session on ESG core, what we call as BRSR core. With us today, we have Dr. K.S. Ravichandran, who is the managing partner, KSR and Company, Company Secretaries LLP for your, who will be the main speaker today. And what is good thing I observed is already there are some inquiries which have come from the participants, and we had requested Dr. Ravichandran to include this in their presentation so that the time management would be very easier. Looking at the questions asked, these are the questions which are coming up because BRSR is new to us. It is evolving. I would say it's maybe little over 2 years what we have the experience in industries, but there are many things which needs to be understood. A process needs to be established, and the entire value chain, both upstream and downstream, it has to encompass. So this is a big challenge. We need such interactions where we will be able to clear the doubts about how to make it more, I would say, effective in terms of reporting, because reporting is something which will be in the public domain, especially for those industries who have to publish their BRSR. But also in the value chain in the coming years, the data supplied by the upstream, that is the suppliers, and also the downstream, the major customers would be part of this disclosure. And so it is maturing, and today I am sure with experience of many years or 2 decades, Dr. Ravichandran comes from the background of company law. He has expertise in company law, securities laws, foreign exchange management, industrial law, and environmental laws. His main practice focuses on corporate governance, board processes, compliance solutions, mergers and acquisitions, and dispute resolutions. These are the important aspects of any enterprise. Also, using his experience, he has authored several influential books, including Duties and Liabilities of Directors, and CSR, ESG, and Charitable Institution. Also, he has written more than 1,000 articles on corporate laws, and frequently speaks at conferences, seminars, and workshops. See, from our experience also, it's very important that the reading between the lines and understanding the requirements of SEBI is the most important aspect of this entire disclosure. Many of his works, especially on the corporate social responsibility and corporate lending, are widely recognized in the legal and corporate community. So, Dr. Ravichandran, now over to you, and we are looking forward to hear from you, from your experience and your interactions in many forums. So I hope you have included some of the major points raised by the participants already, and in the end, we'll have adequate time for question and answer. Over to Dr. Ravichandran.
Very good afternoon to BCIC and the chair of his ESG committee and also the participants. And at the outset, I would like to thank BCIC for this opportunity to share my thoughts on an emerging, very important topic of you and me, in the sense every citizen of the country, rather every person in the globe, is supposed to now consider these aspects as very essential, very fundamental. And in that perspective, I congratulate BCIC for creating this opportunity of sharing thoughts on such an important subject called environmental social governance. Here, prior to going into the structured program, basically in 2009 and 2011, what was evolved at the MCA's initiative was the voluntary guidelines, which were comprised in principles. And these principles are the formation of the foundation of these thoughts. Today, we are at listed company level and also at value chain, upstream, downstream. We are consciously thinking about the climate action programs and other social and governance issues. But foundation was laid in 2009 itself. And in 2011, it formed the voluntary guidelines, which included certain principles like the principle, which is a very, very broad and top level principle of integrity, transparency, openness in doing business. And the second most important principle was sustainable and safe goods to the customers. The third important principle was businesses should respect and promote the well-being of all employees, including those in their value chain. Principle number 3 will have to be read with care, that it talks about a corporate principle. Principle number 3, businesses should respect and promote well-being of employees, including the value chain employees. Please see how depth they are thinking about it. This depth of understanding is necessary to be ingrained in the corporate governance policy of the companies. Then alone this will be succeeding. Principle number 3 is that is very important, and it talks and includes the well-being of employees also. Principle number 4 is on taking care of protecting interest and respect the requirements of all stakeholders. And principle number 5 is relating to promotion of human rights. And principle number 6 pertains to protecting and restoring the environment. 3 and 6, now I am putting some significance attaching there. 1, 3, I have said about well-being of employees, including the value chain. Principle number 6 talks about protecting and restoring the environment. Then principle number 7 talks about the public policy influencing. To what extent practices can influence regulatory and public policy, and whether that engaging in lobbying towards public policy, industrial regulatory policy, etc.? Are they being done in a responsible and transparent manner? That is principle number 7. Then principle number 8 is as large as the principle number 1 on integrity, transparency, and openness. Here we are talking about equitable development. And principle number 9 is like principle number 2, providing value to consumers. Providing value to consumers. What we saw in 2 is sustainable and safe goods. Here we are saying providing value to the consumers with a responsibility, in a responsible manner. See, these 9 principles are the important principles which forms even today globally the fundamentals of ESG. If you break it into certain parts, one is about transparency, integrity. 2 is about sustainability. In order to ensure these 2, that is 1, transparency, integrity, and sustainability. Please now come to the topic. We are talking about transparency and openness and integrity and sustainability. For this driver of 2 important things, we take care of employees, their well-being, including those in the value chain. Consumers, providing safe goods, sustainable goods, responsible way, protecting their interests. Employees, consumers. Environment, protecting environment. Now, these 3 are what is you find in different things. Therefore, ESG is nothing but running the businesses in a manner that you don't compromise on integrity and transparency. Protect employees, environment, consumers. If we are able to see these 3 things, it is sustainable automatically. And when we talk about employees, consumers, and environment, we need to take care of the value chain also, the upstream and the downstream. This is the preface with which I thought I will share my thoughts. Now, I will share screen on a recently published newsletter about a week back, which will be again setting the context and the regulatory environment and requirement as of now on the BRSR code, the business responsibility and sustainability reporting format, and the core factors or attributes, the 9 ESG attributes. Today, what is the requirement? I'll just screen share. You will find here today, while globally countries are setting targets to achieve carbon neutrality, to replace energy and emissions with alternative methods, reduction of emissions globally, global warming to be reduced, right from 2015 Paris Convention to COP28, 29, etc. Country level goals are set. Country heads are sitting over it and breaking their heads. And that is driven down through administrative policies for departments and for the social sector and through the corporate, large corporates, through the BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability reporting, requiring listed entities to make certain disclosures, provide certain assurances, assessment and assurances in relation to environmental, social, governance parameters. The applicable provisions are driven through the listed entities. Therefore, the capital market regulator has been placed with the onerous responsibility of looking at it, requiring it, implementing it. Also, if there is any contravention, take care of such situations. Value chain, when we talk about, according to the Securities and Exchange Board of India regulations, it is nothing but the value chain partners of the listed entity, which encompasses upstream as well as downstream, individually comprising 2% or more of the purchases or sales by value respectively. Therefore, if you are coming in the purchases side of the listed entity, or if you are coming on the sales side of the listed entity and contributing to 2% or more of the listed entities purchases or sales respectively, you are treated as considered as value chain partners. And the need for treating value chain partners accordance with definition is also understood in a minute from now. As of now, the format is called BRSR format, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. This format drives requirements to disclose certain important factors and parameters, which takes into account the general business corporate environment, who are the directors, what is the nature of company, what business it is doing, and the various disclosures relating to all these parameters. The top 1,000 listed entities. For example, the top number one company in market cap is 20 lakh crore in terms of its market cap. Market cap is nothing but a number derived by multiplying the market price of the share and the number of shares in the capital of the company. 20 lakh crore is what I understand Reliance is. Top 1,000 listed entities have to provide BRSR. They have been providing from 23-24. That means we are talking about just 2 years before that. We are now in 25-26. We had 24-25. We had 23-24. And 23-24 is all that we are talking about as far as the BRSR is concerned. So it is a new concept, evolving concept, emerging concept. Now you see the BRSR disclosures, which are also requiring BRSR core pertaining to the 9 ESG attributes we are going to discuss today. The BRSR core comes from 23-24. So 22-23 is the plain format. 23-24 is the BRSR core. We are going to the core aspects of ESG. And what are those 9 ESG aspects? The GHG footprint, the greenhouse gases, all those carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, fluorochlorine, N2O, everything comes in GHG. The footprint has to be, first of all, understood, identified, quantified, assessed, and then strategy to be devised after reporting. When we talk about greenhouse gases, we are talking about the emissions that are taking place by our routine activities, whether an individual or a corporate, there are emissions. But in an industry, emissions are more, and that is a cause of concern. Therefore, the footprint mapping is very important. Therefore, BRSR core requires greenhouse gas footprint to be an important disclosure parameter. Breaking it down into water and energy, the footprint has to be provided specifically. Circularity in relation to when we come to the waste management. That is why I always say this topic is E square, W square. Energy and emissions, water and waste. E square, W square, the 4 attributes are very, very important whenever we are talking generally about this topic. Apart from circularity, the 9 ESG attributes also incorporate employee well-being, gender diversity, inclusive development, the society around you, the local people around you, the local producers around you. The inclusiveness is an all-encompassing topic that I normally say inclusive is not required to be defined because it includes everything that serves the purpose of achieving the principles. Fairness in engaging with customers and suppliers, and openness in business. If you now recall the 9 principles which I have read out, you will find that they are the pillars for defining the attributes of BRSR core. BRSR format is a plain format disclosure of information 20-23 top 1,000 companies. BRSR core is a drilling down mechanism for 9 ESG attributes 23-24. And now BRSR disclosures are required to be provided with independent third-party assessment or assurance for top 500 listed entities from this financial year 25-26. So we have talked about plain BRSR format 22-23, BRSR core 23-24. Now we are talking about assurance function, third-party assessment or assurance for only 500 listed companies from 25-26. The BRSR core must also carry the assessment and assurance. Third point. Now come to the fourth. The fourth one is the BRSR core ESG disclosures 9 parameters for the value chain. We have already discussed what it means by the term value chain. Now for the value chain, how it should be driven. Voluntarily, it is applicable to provide data with respect to the value chain for top 250 listed entities. It is voluntary and BRSR core, and it is only for top 250 and it is voluntary. That means we are in the beginning of the journey when we look at 9 ESG attributes with respect to value chain. Now come to the third-party assessment or assurance for the same 250 listed entities. Again, voluntary from 26-27, which means next financial year. Therefore, 5 things are what as on today in front of you. Top 1,000 companies, listed entities we can say, because all are not companies formed under the Companies Act. Format, disclosures, plain and simple. BRSR core 23-24. BRSR core with third-party assessment or assurance, top 500 only, 25-26, current financial year. Value chain, top 250 only, and disclosures on 9 ESG attributes, voluntary 25-26. With voluntary but with assessment or assurance comes again top 250 listed entities, 26-27. For all other entities, whether listed or not, as far as this is concerned, the SEBI, that is Securities and Exchange Board of India, has made it clear all these requirements are as of now voluntary. Now we have understood that BRSR core, how it is going down to the level of value chain partners requirements. Since it is starting from 25-26, since assessment or assurance is required, since it is voluntary for value chain also, BCIC has thoughtfully brought this topic today itself in the first month of this financial year itself, so that value chain partners are able to identify that they are forming part of it. Listed entities are able to identify that these are all the value chain partners, and drive home the point that these 9 attributes will have to be tested. Now, I will give you the presentation of what these value chain requirements are and how do we really do the job, the process itself. Let me share the PowerPoint presentation, which was hurriedly prepared by me. In BRSR, environmental and sustainability aspects are more important. That is E square, W square, energy, emission, water, waste. How do we do it? We take the 9 attributes. I don't need to read because we have already read it. You see how we should be able to capture and map energy consumption and management. Volume, class, value, data collection, assessment, mapping, and then comes the strategy. Similarly, water consumption and management. Volume, class, value, data collection, assessment, mapping, strategy. Fleet fuel, for example, there is a fleet of ships, there is a fleet of vehicles. They carry the goods across the country, outside the country. The footprint and the fuel consumed, emissions made must be captured. What is the circularity? What kind of efforts the company is doing in terms of data collection and ground scenario analysis? Circularity is a concept which requires to be taken care, which will obviously include waste, collection of waste, what volume, what class of waste, what management we are going to do, whether there is any reclaiming possible by reuse or recycle, or is there a safe disposal? Are we doing that safe disposal? These are all the sustainable way of living. Principle number 2, employee recruitment.
Sir, sorry to disturb you, sir. Sir, can the presentation be made in PPT presentation mode, sir?
Definitely, I think I forgot to do that. Yeah. So,
Sorry again to disturb you, sir. Sorry.
is that fine now?
Yes, sir.
So I would say that after this E square W square, immediately I have placed the circularity aspect. Because once you have mapped once your data collection is done, assessment is done, you have done the mapping, you will have to apply your mind on the reasonable circularity, sustainability aspects. This is very important because if you are, in my opinion, that is of course my opinion, if you are able to take care of this environment, we are going to leave an earth which is fit and at least at the same level as we are living for our posterity. So therefore, sustainability and circularity are essential requirements for the future people to live. And this automatically, in my opinion, will take care the consumer's interest and the stakeholders' interest and the employee's interest. Sustainability mandates looking at employee interest, consumer interest, and stakeholders' interest necessarily. So when we are studying about these parameters, we need to separate it as verticals or buckets and look at each aspect separately. For example, employee well-being, health, nutrition, safety, redressal of grievances. Only yesterday I found in Twitter, that is X platform, there was a story about a person who was asked by the manager to disclose some surgery I think she had undergone. The manager had asked, tell me, I have the right to ask you what is the surgery. Show me the pictures, show me the records. In a large corporation. And she has been sent home, asking her to send the files, data to verify. What the company received was her resignation letter. Therefore, employee well-being is a matter of policy. It is not about protecting the employee in one aspect alone. It is about everything. For example, when I went to an industrial unit in Pune for a direct inspection, I took at least 10 important pictures to point out to the company which runs the industry there that the workers are working in a place where the ambient air quality doesn't seem to be congenial for working. The ambient air quality itself, as you enter, you are able to see it. Similarly, the various labor law, factory related things you can understand. When I went and put my hand inside a sack of onions, what came out was some, what you can say, the decayed onions. Therefore, it is nothing to limit your thought when we say employee well-being. This is all encompassing. It starts from even recruitment. positioning, gender diversity, other diversity, inclusiveness, health, nutrition, safety, and mechanism for whistleblowing, mechanism for grievances redressal. It's a big subject by its own. That is another point. So we have discussed about E square, W square. We have discussed about sustainability and circularity. We have discussed about employees. We have discussed about product related labeling, marketing, what disclosure you are making under the standards of Asian measures called Legal Metrology Act, and also the packaging life cycle management. Are we not supposed to do that? Are we looking at that? Are we providing the correct data? Or are we providing data which was obtained previously and we keep publishing the same? Therefore, product labeling, marketing, life cycle management, packaging protects interests of the consumer, provides the need for managing your business transparently with openness and with integrity, stakeholders protecting interests. Under the concept of circularity and sustainability, thereafter it comes, what is your openness in business? What is the supply chain assessment you do? What is the ingredient responsible sourcing you are doing? What is the local sourcing out of that? Because we need to ensure the society around us. If you remember in 135 of the Companies Act, CSR, when the government of India introduced the corporate social responsibility, they advised companies to do these social responsibility activities around the places where the company is operating. In that process, the whole of the country will be connected, and you will be able to take care of your people, that is employees, your customers, your investors, and the people around you, both the ordinary human beings as well as the men in business. And therefore, it is important for the company to be responsible in ingredient sourcing, provide as much as possible local sourcing, assess your supply chain, be open in what you are doing. This is the principle we study. Then, similar to employee redressal of grievances, have customer complaints, have redressal mechanisms. Therefore, for example, I will give you one recent example of a case where I found somebody has purchased milk, just milk from a department store, packaged with all the ability to withstand for about 6 months. The expiry date is after 6 months. And the person has purchased for the purpose of some iftar party. The milk is purchased from a nearby store. According to the story, he comes and prepares that, the customary kanji with the semia or semolina or something. We can call it as a Tamil language or Kannada also, I think the same, only payasam or something, sweet dish. And the milk is poured. All relatives are waiting. Milk is spoiled. Immediately, whether the customer complaint is able to come to the corporate, whether there is a redressal mechanism, whether such things have happened as a one-off instance or it has happened every time. Very important point. This is what is governance requires you to look at it. And take the case of a hospital. You go to a hospital. Are they providing most essential diagnoses and tests that you are supposed to do? Or are they providing all the tests so that their equipments can be engaged? Normal discussion point every time. Are your patients getting treated after surgery, post-operation? They go back and come only for the review as per the timelines given, or immediately they come back with problems? This is what I am saying as responsible business, which requires a lot of study in these aspects. Therefore, what we do is, in an aspect, in an assessment program, we have to study various things. I have listed here is not exhaustive. I have given only an indicative list. If I were to go and do this job, first and foremost thing is I will ignore pure intangible assets like trademarks, patents, trade secrets, confidential information, business model, business strategy, business structure, agencies, distributors, stockists, and various engagement of channels, supply chain channel or in the sales side. All these are private to the business model of the company. Number one. Number two, they are not directly in any way influencing the W square E square or E square W square. And therefore, they can be ignored. You may not touch sensitive subjects. You may not touch the business sector strategy, structures and engagement and the terms and conditions and the policies regarding that. What we do is, policy level, what is there with respect to this? Environmental protection, sustainability, circularity. Ask yourself whether the companies have some policy. Because I always say, policies drive the entire thing. If you are able to have your thoughts will be reflected in the policy. And if the policy is there and it is responsibility of the policy is given to the apex level, that is board of directors, what OECD says is ESG policies, ownership must be with the board of directors, and one level below the board, an officer must be taking charge and reporting directly to the board on the ESG matter. Please see how this structure is advised by the governance organizations. Therefore, first and foremost is at least come se come, is there a policy do we have on environmental protection, sustainability, circularity? Do we have the policies in place for safety, health and welfare of employees? Do we have the policies on customers, consumers? Therefore, policy is number one. So I have given you a broad thought. We don't need to check certain things. We start with policies and we do the mapping of physical and human resources under utilization. When I say physical, we say land buildings, we say plant equipments, units, divisions, factories, facilities, anywhere, and the human resources that are being utilized. When you map that physical and human resources, the whole of the resources that drive the top line of the company can be mapped. Sorry, the whole of the resources, whatever plant-wise, division-wise, physically, human resources-wise, we can do slicing. Any 64 slicing also you can do. And then when it comes to specific things like water, energy, emissions, waste, we can look at the volume, we can look at the source, we can look at the type and class, we can look at the purpose for which consumption is taking place, whether it is water or energy, what is the intensive source amongst that, what we need to apply mind, where is it by and large going, what is the highest quantity consumption in which place, whether we can attend to that and try to bring strategies for that. For that data collection of sources and types and classes and purposes required, including V and V, that is volume and value. Then we can map the emissions. Then we can identify, bring everything as an equivalent of CO2, carbon dioxide. Then we can see how we will be able to achieve neutrality and whatever replacements, technology, investment required. So therefore, once we have done this assessment, we will see whether the company's governance process itself drives it. whether the company has programs for circularity, whether the company has program for inclusive development, equitable development, whether the board level diversity is there when you look at employee level diversity. Are they transparent in doing their business? Are they protecting the employees and recruitment policies are designed like that? Are they providing sufficient facilities, amenities, ambience, air quality, drinking water, canteen, restroom, and every aspect? This is the methodology I will do. This is only inclusive, it is not exhaustive. I have just given you a thought process only. We will be designing it depending upon the sector, depending upon, for example, I may be able to use the SASB Sustainability Standards Board for a sector specific requirements. A sector specific requirement, for example, a beverages industry. Naturally, you will understand beverages industry will have large amount of water consumption, large amount of fleet moving from one corner to another corner, large amount of bottles or plastic or caps and your sleeves and all these things will be there, printing chemical will be there, lines will be there, water will be consumed, and therefore power naturally, fuel naturally, so energy means you have emission, and all these things at store level, at street level, there will be waste. Consumer will create the waste, throw it somewhere. Whole of the company will have its own effluent treatments requirements. Therefore, SASB can be relied upon for the purpose of identifying the manner in which we need to assess and account. This gives you the methodology for input data collection. And once you do this job, you will be able to understand what are the gaps in the governance. What are the processes and controls which are required to be installed? What are the areas where integrity of the data is not good or not sufficient or requires some more granular assessment and analysis? You will get it. How do we then create value if you are not doing this effort? That is why thoughtfully the Parliament has introduced a statutory duty under 166 of the Companies Act, saying it is the duty of every director of a company to protect its stakeholders and environment. Please see the language stakeholders. Stakeholders, beautiful word. Your employees. I will always put employees first. That is basically. Then comes the customers, consumers. Then comes the creditors. That is public banks and institutions and other creditors who are operational suppliers, vendors of goods and services. So employees, consumers, creditors, investors, society, and public at large will get incorporated there, which means stakeholders. And if you are able to do it in all your thoughts and processes, you are able to achieve it. It is the duty of, statutory duty of every director, of every company, private, public, 1% company, unlisted company, small company, anything, protect stakeholders and environment is a statutory duty. And for the first time, they have incorporated the word environment also into this. In 2014, we are talking about India marching ahead in 14 itself. Thereafter, what I feel is a value creation will come only when we are committed to, as a code of conduct and undertaking, that our company believes applicable law compliance is basic to my existence. That means I inherently understand non-compliance is removing my entitlement to existence. And non-compliance is costlier than compliance. That is number 2. Number 3, basic level 1 we have discussed. Are you ready to go beyond? Or are we going to say it is applicable for 500 companies, 250 companies? We are going to be voluntary only. Okay, next time we will do it. It is only do or explain now. We need not contribute to the climate action programs of the country. We need not look at it, or we are very, very limited resources we have. Beyond the regulatory requirements, are we ready to look at those principles and at least on environmental and sustainability factors, are we ready to apply mind at even MSME level? This will help us to grow the nation, create value for the company, which means automatically economy. The board of directors must be committed to incorporate the ESG attributes. The company must have the policy of openness and transparency. If it has so, it wins all the stakeholders, which I already said, employees, customers, creditors, and investors. Highest respect must be accorded towards safety and health of the employees and customers. Diversity should be the policy. Inclusiveness should be the policy. Thereby, we are able to make systems and processes necessary for assessing, understanding, assessing key performance indicators, which are the 9 ESG attributes. This is exactly what I thought. Today, I will first give an intro into this. When you look at this particular value creation and the methodology which I have given, the value creation process, we will be able to understand that large corporations will automatically drive it down to the supply chain, value chain, and require inputs to be collected. What are the challenges? For example, globally, if we are talking about switching over to other energy sources, certain countries which are producing countries, certain countries which are supplying to various other developed, so-called developed economies. Are they going to, that is the countries producing, are they going to find sufficient funds for the purpose of survival, sustainable nature of their business? Is it so easy to switch over to other sources of energy and reduce the emissions? For example, what I did was, I took 50 companies to study their parameters, ESG performance. For example, you take Coal India. Coal India, see how I have chosen the company like IOC and Coal India, Indian Oil Corporation, and like Tata Steels, big companies. If you look at Coal India, they say 2070, that is 2070, we will achieve carbon neutrality. And you know what? Coal India supplies 80% of the power. The energy comes from Coal India. 80% of the country's energy needs are met there. And if you have to switch over to another energy source, what kind of technology is required? What kind of investment is required? Do we as small companies, listed or unlisted, do we have the wherewithal to put so much of money into the stream of production and change everything? Whether we have skilled people for that? Do we have sufficient skill development taking place? And 2047, if I remember correct, let me take the today's statement by none other than Arun Nageshwaran. Ananta Nageshwaran, Chief Economic Advisor. India must create 8 million jobs annually to meet 2047 vision. We are in 2025. For 2047, if we need to achieve, we have to create 8 million jobs annually. And ESG is one contributor to job creation. One value creation is coming from here. Because in order to do business, you need a calm and quiet society which enables it. People should be skilled, and skill development, reskilling, upskilling, new skilling, everything has to, learning and unlearning must take place. You know what, 2062, for example, 2062 itself, we are going to have a population of, UNDP says, 175 crores. We will be the most populous country in the world. And in order to meet the requirements, granular requirements, in the 175, 100 will be constituted by children and the seniors. Rest 70 has to take care of the burden of the 100. And where will this 70 or 75 crore get jobs? What institutions have to be created? What skilling has to be created? ESG is part of this function. And just look at the scenario where, imagine a scenario of this population explosion, of the senior people rising population, children, and then in this scenario, just look at process automation, digital transformation and process automation, what will happen? Therefore, we are today itself talking about sustainability. Therefore, we are today itself talking about environmental protection. Therefore, in ESG attributes, if we are able to concentrate whether small or big, individual or entity, I think we would have created a lot of value. In the global approach, we would have been part of the journey. This is my introductory thing, and I would like to look at the questions that are shared. Roopa, will you be sharing the questions? One of the questions which ACE Designers has asked is, I will share it itself so that everybody is able to see it. Is there any possibility of making BRSR reporting mandatory? I have already told you what is the level of mandatoriness of this BRSR, correct? This is exactly a requirement of listed companies, capital market regulator requiring it for 1,000 companies to disclose and 500 companies to do assessment and 250 companies to voluntarily look at value chain and provide in 26, 27 some assurance and assessment, make it voluntary for others. So this is a real today's program. Mechanisms and practices change from organization to organization. For example, I am extensively looking at beverages sector, shipping sector, hospital sector. I find shipping sector, for example, the kind of ships that we are having carrying Indian flag, the number of ships that we are operating globally, the kind of the emissions that these ships are causing is a cause of concern. The auxiliary engine, the main engine, the kind of fuel, that the age. If you remember, the DG Shipping brought a regulation through the sector regulator that a ship, a vessel which is 25 years old is no longer going to be recognized as fit to sail with Indian flag. Therefore, regulatory concerns can be indirectly introduced in sectors where these are essential and important. As of now, not all public companies will be requiring BRSR reporting. Personally, I have requested Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, not the current one, previous one, that is about a year back, that there shall be something relating to BRSR in the board's report of all companies. Let us first bring the awareness requirement of talking about it at the policy level in the boardroom as a governance. So there could be sooner or later some reduced versions for do or explain or voluntary basis to all the companies, including private companies which are not MSME. I mean, which are not small companies, though they may be MSME, because today we have 400, 500 crore for MSME itself. Most essential ESG attributes and best practices have to be designed for specific sector. Even within specific sector, individual companies will have structures and layers where information gathering itself is difficult. Data collection itself is, because nobody is going to collect data which I am asking with respect to E square and W square. Nobody is going to have a complete information and policies, a set of documents, rules, etc. for employee well-being, for example, employee diversity, for example. These are to be driven. That is why I addressed policy level should be the first one, at least in my opinion, in the next 3 years, 26, 27, 27, 28. All companies above a threshold should definitely have policies directed to looking at this, at least now. When we talk about 2030, we should be able to give some accurate data. When we talk about 2047, we should be able to be compliant in most of the aspects. But for you, I will tell you today, SEC proposals are way behind our BRSR and SEBI proposals. I am very happy and proud to say this. I have studied the Securities Exchange Commission's proposals about the listed entities and registrants which are required to disclose. They have the same concern like our companies may not look at the scope 3 or any other emissions which is coming from supplier level, value chain level things. And for they also want to introduce clauses like that. I have studied the interaction within the Secretary General to everybody, and they are probably looking at it. We are probably looking at what best can I do. That is the kind of transformation in India, I will say. Having studied across several jurisdictions, I have confidence in saying that we are marching ahead and we have a lot of things to do because of the 175 crore we are going to achieve in 2062. Innovation is absolutely, there is no doubt. In this context of innovation, which APCO Infratech Private Limited has asked, this is not something like an intangible property. This is about good governance. This is about sustainability. I'll give you an example of a South African Airlines case where the South African Airlines was bleeding like our earlier Air India. And they have placed some new generation aircraft, Airbus. They have paid huge advance also. But they were not able to get delivery of the aircraft because they have not been able to find funds for that. After some time, the clause was about forfeiting the advances given. Whole amount is going to be lost by the South African Airlines. The chairperson of the company is dilly-dallying and dithering. She is not taking a decision what to do. Airbus comes to the picture. Airbus gives the South African government, the airlines, a proposal. I am not going to forfeit your advance. It's a huge money. For example, in Jet Airways case, when I was analyzing their appeal for the employees, Jet Airways aircraft maintenance engineers before the NCLAT, I found that there was no application of mine with respect to 500 crore advance lying in some aircraft manufacturing companies. So in this case, Airbus told South African Airlines, I am not going to forfeit. I will give you next generation fuel efficient aircraft. You take it. The chairperson dithered, and therefore, you see, governance requires ordinary things to be attended instead of extraordinary things to be talked about. Please remember these words. Governance requires ordinary things to be attended instead of extraordinary things to be talked about. Therefore, each company, that is why OECD says clearly and consciously, apex level, the board must look at it. As far as health, safety, all those aspects are concerned, EcoVadis compliance and all will be very good. And government has, to my knowledge, not approved any courses, but universities are offering globally as well as within the country. There are various engineering colleges, universities, and technology institutions. They are providing very interesting courses coupled with the ESG and AI, so that we are able to map the data, analyze the data, bring the dashboards, take the action. I have already answered the EMIL question and FICCI question. Yes, sustainability for MSME sector is the focus of today's. That is why I said value creation. If you do this, even in MSME sector, for example, SME listing you take, this may not be applicable as per your regulation itself. Regulation 34 itself says it is not applicable for a SME listed company also. However, having been in practice, I know if an MSME sector entity were to go for loans, definitely I am telling you, you will be getting sourcing green financing, green funding options. You will get subsidies. Even today, solar is available. You will definitely get investor valuation, reporting. All these things will create value for the company. And that is why the takeaway today is on sustainability for MSME sector. How does it create value? It creates value in several respects. Your customers are going to value. Today, risk management requires study of consumer behavior. If your company is known for environmentally adverse practices, negative practices, consumers may shun your company and look at some other company. Sustainability requires that also. Value creation. Investors are going to give you better value creation. Employees are going to stick to you and they'll be flashing that I am working with A and B company, because they know that this reputation of this company is for this. Therefore, ESG is going to bring key managerial person retention instead of attrition. Value creation comes from several aspects, and therefore I certainly say it applies to MSME sector also. Assessment, I have already talked about. ESG data collection, I have given you the methodology. Audits, whether they are foolproof. Let me tell you, we had the Gensol experience now, only 2-3 days back. 2 years back, I was asked about related party transactions between Gensol and BlueSmart. We talked about it. And today it is in the public light. Today they are talking about MCA ordering an investigation, SEBI issuing a very scathing attack and order on Gensol. So audits generally are foolproof, depends on governance levels of the board of directors. If the board wants to drive it down, proper audits will be there. If the board is complacent, it's going to be accordingly. Therefore, ESG audits cannot be branded as foolproof unless we have that kind of a commitment to get foolproof audits. Then Sundaresan, my friend, has asked, what is the preparedness required? I have already said, yes, there is a qualification with all guidance only as of now. Identifying value chain partner itself may not be happening in several companies. That is why SEBI has pushed it to some other date. So it is voluntary as of 25-26. Assessment is voluntary as of 26-27. And that too for 250 companies only. This gives you an idea that we have a roadmap of next 3 years where we can work on that. All principle mandatory, we have already discussed. All industries, see, service providers may be different. It is service provider may be different, but a technology company. For example, today we are talking about e-waste. For example, today we are talking about servers going to cause so much of heat and emissions. What are we going to do? We do not know. We are yet to apply thought on that. So therefore, category of industries, which I have mentioned, like our, shipping industry. How many ships are ocean going vessels? And what is the age of them? When are you going to have changing the vessel? Is there any program, whether vessel changing tax incentive available under the Income Tax Act, is it sufficient for changing the vessels? Not a problem. I have studied those aspects also, and industry-wise, it's going to be there. There are good studies of 50 companies and 10 top companies in my book on CSR and ESG. Their commitments are very, I can say, some sort of saying like, yes, let us try to do it in 2045, 2070, like that. Today, I have undertaken 5 top companies as per the Business Today report to see whether they have provided any specific data with respect to what they will do in 25, 26 or 26, 27. No, nothing is available. Then carbon border adjustment, magno electrocastings, carbon border adjustment mechanism. Yes, it is a transition period. 2026, it is going to be introduced. I have not studied elaborately on this EU requirement, but I am sure whoever, even our own customers who are exporters to EU, they have to consider this. We need to measure the carbon quantity of the exports. It is nothing but a value chain requirement in different language. The regulations came in 2023, October 2023, say it is there. And we also have 2023 Green Credit Certification Program for afforestation. Administrator has been appointed by Government of India. State governments have already made available hectares of land. So both these things show that this topic is driving attention from all over the world in several respects. CBAM certification will be required, but it is today in a transition period only. 26, it is going to be mandatory. Indicators and leadership, yes, we need to answer. We have to report. Each and every leadership indicator is do or explain in the BRSR code. Leadership is doing something beyond the specific requirement as of now. These attributes are definitely linked to reporting. It is internal capacity is required to be built for it. I have already given you the guidance also. There is absolutely no doubt it is cross-functional. Somebody must have the patience to explain, create awareness, and deal with it because it is interdisciplinary. And also there is a fundamental problem of hierarchy and your position. Take the CSO. For example, Chief Sustainability Officer is reporting one level below the board. He is going to be laterally aligned with, in sync with, or the same level with, let us say, the key managerial personnel. There will be some sort of an authority in the hierarchy to inform, require, make it. Non-compliance will be flagged, escalated, and fired. So cross-functional, and it is a big job of coordination. Every person may not be suitable for such functions. So it has to be there. Of course, I told you ESG is going to be part of the story of 8 million jobs annually to be created across the country. I'm saying solar, windmill, so many other emission, this thing, technology, AI, replacement technology, and all these things, reporting, assessment, audit. This 8 million story is going to be supported by ESG. Therefore, it is not a one-man job. It is a leadership job. It requires a team. And value chain disclosures must be with all the requirements, as I told you. For the time being, I would prefer SASB is doing a good job. Sector-wise, they are providing data and it's very useful in my opinion. Any questions I can answer? Roopa?
Yes, sir.
I have answered the questions that you have shared.
Yes, sir.
Roopa, still we have about 16, 17 minutes time. If the participants have some specific questions, we can take it. But from my side, Dr. Ravichandran, even for me, a professional who has worked on this topic all along, it was like hearing a storyline. You know, you explained it very well. I liked your R square and W square, whatever you said. And what was important is you could explain clearly with your own examples, what you have seen as part of your job. So that made it easier to understand. So if there are some questions, please we can use because this is a good platform for exchange of information, and it will be beneficial to all member companies.
Ms.
Dr.
Sharda, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, one second before my friend starts. I just want to tell you the responsible behavior of corporate business owners. You take the case of J&J, Johnson & Johnson. In 2021, $7.5 billion they remitted as damages for a suit involving a baby talc, which started from the circuit level court to the federal state Supreme Court to the national Supreme Court. Ultimately, Supreme Court rejected even admitting an appeal. And this $7.5 billion grew into higher levels later on because it is a representative class action. A simple issue of using an ingredient. If you remember my 9 attributes, I talked about responsible sourcing. The board of directors of J&J I have seen the plaintiff and the defense. I went to using somebody in the US, I collected the affidavits filed by each of the parties to understand what is the core issue involved there. The board of directors had the opportunity of using asbestos-based ingredient or some other material. But they consciously chose to use this, unmindful of the harm it will cause in the long run to the mother and the babies, cancer level. If they had used the other substitute material, which is a valuable one, which would not have caused any harm, they would not have made so many sufferings for so many people, irreparable damage would not have caused. But on the store, each quantity would have been a costlier one. People would not buy. Governance, top level. Volkswagen introduced a cheap device across the country. And in NGT India, Volkswagen said, in India that regulation is not applicable. The NGT, National Green Tribunal, asked Volkswagen if it is causing human damage to people in EU and USA, in India it will cause. Please see the language. In India it will definitely cause. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Dr. KSR, good evening, Sharada here. Yes, namaste. I have 2 questions. One, this is a relatively new requirement, as you said, the BRSR filing. So, in your experience, after it is filed, does SEBI evaluate that, look at that, any kind of questions are asked, clarifications from the company? What's your experience in the last 3 years?
We have not heard any such issue because in 25-26 only, for the first time, 500 companies, BRSR core requires this assessment or assurance. So they are going to rely on people like us for assessment. Agencies, accredited agencies are also getting trained. Even BCIC would be able to do some assurance function separately. We can look at the constitution of assessment for certain purposes. We will also be able to achieve that and provide support to our people. So as of now, there has not been any big problem.
Okay, I just have quickly another question.
I can add, if you go through the SEBI, requirements, SEBI has all the authority to engage their own experts, and they can go and do a sort of assessment in the industries and corporations. So if I am not sure whether they did it for 23, 24, couple of industries, I am not sure, but this is part of the regulations which are available.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Just one more question, KSR. You mentioned, you said while assessing, you said you can ignore the IP part, trademark, patents. There was one sentence there. So I was just thinking, You also, I wanted to relate it to that E square, W square, what you said. So checking on patents, for example, don't you think it is required if there is any energy saving or emission reducing or water conservation innovation which has taken place in that sector or in that industry?
Yeah, I
Don't you
understand.
think?
I just, I will now reveal my methodology. I said pure intangible assets. Okay. Which is not functional and technological. Somebody
Okay,
which is
because
like trademarks, somebody which is biological and all. So, for example, plant varieties, I have studied and argued cases also. There could be any number of issues, environmental issues. Technology, there could be a technology which is coming up. So we are not going to leave all the intangible assets. Whatever is pure intangible, which is only for the purpose of pushing the trade, marketing, publicity and all.
okay, so where there is innovation, obviously it has to be looked at because that's one of the key contributors for this. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Ravichandran Ramaswamy here. I have gone through about 10 BRSR reports for learning. And what I found was the essential indicators where they're concerned, there are a lot of technical things. For example, the emission of SO2 or other nitrous oxide, etc. Provider be really able to check and verify it, or they go by the company reports? Assurance providers, will they be able to actually check it and confirm, or you go by what the company is reporting and believe that?
See, the regulators are going to the extent of pointing out that don't go only by specifications. For example, a manufacturer will profess, these are all my specifications, this will be the run time, this will be the energy consumption or emissions, heat generated and all. So therefore, a proper assessment of CO2 equivalent is a tough task. That is required, however, to be done in order to, for example, if you take the shipping industry, the data, I discussed personally with DGIR, I'll tell you. I met in person DGIR. It's a very colorful officer. But it is very clear that today's data is not going to be as accurate as it is actual. Data will be, integrity of the data will come when the measuring methodologies and data collection, input collection, all those are properly streamlined. For example, the carbon, the CBAM, whatever mechanism we are now talking about in EU in 2023, where our country, several, for example, people from Coimbatore, several valve castings, foundry manufacturers are only exporting it. So here we do the emissions. The quantity of emission is going to be reflected in the balance sheet of the EU importer. Therefore, we need to have a proper measurement of the emissions based on the energy that is consumed.
So the assurance provider has to look at the manner in which they measure it. That is sufficient now?
We cannot go with, for example, a truck is supposed to consume a diesel, for example, and is going to run for 10 kilometers, per liter. That badge or representation of the manufacturer cannot be taken as indicator of your truck running, one of the trucks in your fleet running for, let us say, 1 lakh kilometer. This will be the approximate diesel consumption. No.
See, my experience from Bosch, because we went through reasonable assurance in 23-24 and 22-23.
In Bosch.
So most of the auditing firms come with a lot of Excel and, they will go into the details. They will start from logbooks. They take the consumptions and, percentage of various constituents in, fuel. And they calculate and, this will be done. Already, I think competency is being developed in this area by different agencies.
And tools are there, software tools.
Yeah, and
so enough material to verify.
Observations in terms of the correctness of the data.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
So, shall we call it a day?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, Dr. Ravichandran, thank you very much for this insightful presentation. And this is, as you rightly said, this is an evolving field, and there is a lot of things which will mature in the years to come. It is good that the requirement has been deferred by 2 years. Otherwise, getting data from the value chain, especially on the upstream side, would have been a Herculean task.
Correct.
And this is giving us some time. But what I have seen is most of the customers, if you talk about automotive industries, OEMs are already collecting this data from Tier 1. So they are prepared for the future requirements. And your presentation was, as I said, very simple to understand, and you connected this with your own experience and, in different industries and corporations. Thank you very much. And also to the participants, Dr. Ravichandran has a series of lectures organized on this topic. And you will get the invites for the subsequent presentations, webinars. Please join so that it helps you to understand, and this is a way we can, we can meet the expectations of our companies, because companies depend on us, and it's very important to give the right kind of data, right interpretation, and then it becomes a public document. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the participants. Over to Roopa and Colonel Harish.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for this exhaustive session. And we also would like to inform the participants that another 3 more webinar series on the continued part on various aspects of BRSR is being scheduled, and we'll be informing you on the date very shortly. And please do share with us any further queries if you are having, so that we will share it to Dr. Ravichandran, and we'll come back to you on that. And thanks, sir. Thanks for your time and for the special address to our members. Thank you once again. And thanks to the chair and co-chair of the ESG Expert Committee, sir, for structuring this session. Thanks again to all the participants.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chair and co-chair and BCIC, Roopa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.